Lots of polite words said about Julie Harrington this week, but not that many polite words said about the meat of her tenure, really. How's she done, Lydia, and who's going to take over? Or who should take over?
That's the second question is a difficult one, isn't it? We should start by saying that this is a really difficult role. It's a role in which it is said that as a result of the governance review, the BHA had more power. I think it's got less, personally. And we also ought to acknowledge that the moment that she got the job, the carpet was pulled from under her feet because the governance review was announced. So it was really difficult from the word go, I think. She's got a lot of praise for her work behind the scenes. One of the criticisms put forward about her is that she wasn't seen publicly enough. The behind the scenes, I mean, I think you made the point when you were speaking to Rishi Prasad earlier this week on your podcast that she would be a conciliatory voice trying to bring people together to go forward within horse racing. And we always talk about unity being important, but sometimes you just want somebody to stand up for what's right, for the long-term future of horse racing, rather than the short-term commercialities that most of the people around the table are most interested in.
So this idea of having a more commercially focused leader...
I don't understand that.
What about Connor's point that you need a leader who is a bit more of a visible advocate for the sport?
I 100% agree with that. I don't understand why you would need another commercial voice when you've got the commercial committee sitting around which is where the real key power is focused. And the thing that I am really bothered about is that we have the same inputs here. So we have the same people choosing the shortlist, interviewing people, choosing the final person who goes forward, the same structures and processes that person will have to go through, and we think we're going to come out with a better answer. I don't understand why that would happen.
So there was a restructure that was considered to be a positive one.
Tosh.
But you think that's...
I think it's a fiction. I've said so from the start.
OK. Who would you like to see leading the sport?
Oh, God knows. What I was going to say was that I thought it was quite funny. I saw Martin Cruddas said that she'd done a brilliant job and he thought she was great.
Wow.
And I was kind of thinking, God, you really don't want to hear that, do you, when you've just been running the BHA for a while? You know, like if the racecourses are saying you've done a really good job, then, you know, have you not been strict enough with the... You know, people always say the racecourses have got too much power. If they're turning around and saying you did a good job, that's bad. I thought she did a good job. I actually think a lot of this communication stuff, it kind of... To me, it seemed to hark back to... She came on here, I was in that day, and she came and did an interview on Luck on Sunday, and a lot of people said she didn't do very well in the interview, and it was very early on in her tenure. And I kind of felt like that stuck with her the whole time. A lot of people sort of just seemed to remember this kind of 8 minutes on Luck on Sunday, or however long it was. And that was a bit unfortunate.
Longer
because...
than 8 minutes.
Well, it's probably longer. It was not as long as this talking point, but after...
Smash the system straight away.
after she... always looking to smash the system. After she finished, you know, people did come out and say she did a lot of really good work behind the scenes. And I... Yeah, maybe that just isn't a thing that's valued these days. You know, it's like I saw something in the news the other day that someone was talking about blokes applying for job interviews and how if a bloke applies, if there are 5 things that they can't really do, they still apply. Whereas a woman, if there's one thing they can't do, they rule themselves out. And I think... and another guy was saying, oh, yeah, I got promoted 3 times in my job this year because I just made a conscious decision to be more confident and say everything really loudly.
I'm sure that's not an issue in horse racing. It's not bloke-heavy in horse racing.
Well, no, that's what I wonder. Was there an element of sexism to the whole idea that... you know, that she wasn't visible enough.
Definitely an element of sexism, but I don't think it's the whole story. But I would
quite
say
like Nick Rust, but I felt like she was better than Nick Rust.
But didn't they oscillate wildly between somebody who came on and spoke too much?
He was someone that spoke a lot, and she was someone that didn't speak very much. And, you know, I don't know. I think some people...
This programme was blamed for his demise as well. I think we're bearing a bit slightly too heavy a load here.
a bit like Have I Got News for You and Boris Johnson.
You asked me who should it be. I haven't got a clue. I've got no idea.
Right. Let's talk about the documentary that was aired on RTE this week, which was called Horses Making a Killing, and focused on the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine regulated abattoir in Ireland, the only one that deals with horses, and also focused quite extensively on the illegal trafficking of horses for human consumption to the continent and fraud involving the use of microchips. And it traced back to the horse racing world, Lydia, and traced back particularly to some named trainers in the documentary as well. There were graphic images of cruelty within the slaughterhouse as well. It was pretty uncomfortable. It
was really appalling. It was very, very disturbing to watch. And clearly that is the only government-regulated equine slaughterhouse in Ireland. But the government figures, DAFM, the Department for Agriculture, Fish and the Marine, didn't have access to the parts of the estate whereby all of that cruelty, shocking scenes were going on.
It's pretty inexplicable. Really.
Totally inexplicable. I've already said I feel that they must have shown a distinct lack of curiosity, because it's impossible that you could have had all of those things going on just over there and not had any curiosity about it. Now, I don't know the setup. Maybe they're only in on certain days and all of that kind of stuff. But, you know, clearly that needs to be addressed. But from horse racing's point of view, Horse Racing Ireland needs to address the whole kind of digital passports, the whole transport of live animals, making sure that horses can't disappear in this kind of way, and that there is a clear policy in terms of welfare towards end of life for the industry to follow. And you mentioned the three trainers that were Shark Hanlon, Luke Comer and Philip Rothwell. Philip Rothwell didn't give a comment to the programme. Shark Hanlon and Luke Comer did. But the points for them to take away, and I think all trainers to take away, is that there should be dignity at end of life, and the advice, certainly from the British Horse Racing Authority, is that it should be done in familiar home surroundings, and so horses shouldn't be sent off to a slaughterhouse and have the last moments of their life, even if it was in the best possible circumstances in that scenario, and these were the worst possible circumstances.
Yes, indeed, and those pictures, if anyone was thinking of doing that, you would have hoped
never go there again.
They wouldn't do that again for the sake of a few €100.
But there's self-responsibility here in terms of making. If you have a difficult decision to make about a horse who's come to the end of life, or for whatever reason, whether it is for injury or temperamentally or whatever it is, that the best, most humane decision is to put that horse down, then you must adhere to the most humane circumstances, and that should be it is done at home within calm, dignified surroundings.
Yeah, very difficult to argue against that. Let's talk about the manifestos that have been now all released.
Yeah, basically,
all
released.
All the manifestos. And is there anything about what we need to know in any of these manifestos?
Well, I can't say I spent a lot of time reading the whole of them, but I believe the Tory manifesto didn't
Why not? That's why you're here.
Well, I mean, bedtime reading. I got through the Plaid Cymru one. The Tory manifesto, I believe, didn't have any,
in Welsh.
Didn't have any mention of racing or gambling in it. The Liberal Democrat one very much looked like they'd taken their lead from the Social Market Foundation. They were talking about affordability checks at £100. And very stringent, and talking about gambling, being a health issue and that kind of thing. So very much the way that when this whole kind of gambling review came in, that people were starting to talk about, and not where we are now. In terms of Labour, I think their thing sort of read as a kind of endorsement of the BGC, really. They were saying, well, everyone's doing a damn good job and we'll kind of let them get on with it. I think that's what will happen, because I think Keir Starmer, well, I think a lot of things about Keir Starmer, but I think he's a technocrat, basically. And, he's come from the CPS. He's a Quango man. He seems to be he's in favour of appointing people to lots of kind of fancy job titles. You'll be all right, Connor. There's lots of jobs going. Lots of fancy job titles and huge salaries all over the place. I think he'll quite like the look of Andrew Rhodes and say they're doing a damn good job. Racing is a bit of a hot potato. Gambling generally doesn't go down too well on the backbenches with Labour. Why don't we let the Gambling Commission just rumble along with this thing? They've already done a lot of work on it. I'm sure that's how they'll treat it.
Go on.
Well, look, I think we have a job to do then to stop that being the case. But look, I just think the in-tray that the Labour government will have in talking to some of my colleagues who are going to be in Cabinet, we're not in the first 500 things. We have a window, I think, of a few months to get Labour looking at us and what we want and what we need in terms of British racing, or we will lose the opportunity for them to do anything. And the de facto, i.e. the status quo, is not good for British racing.
So what happens practically then? Does it just dribble along?
In terms of the gambling bill,
in terms of
it's clean, so there's no obligation on any new government to take forward.
They could rip up the white paper and start again if they wanted to.
We remain in this kind of curious stasis where the Gambling Commission just kind of plays it however they see fit.
I think an incoming Labour government will pick up from where we are, but it won't do that immediately, and it may just not bother even returning to it. I think Neil makes a very, very good point.
Well, I think also there's a kind of balance between, backbench Labour MPs generally are not predisposed towards gambling. You know, the only time they come into contact with gambling is people that have got in trouble, coming to their surgery with financial problems. They don't, there's not a lot of race courses in, a month ago there weren't many race courses. There will be in a fortnight, maybe. That's definitely true. That will change, and that might be an interesting change.
That's important.
And it's an important change, yeah, for sure. But I think the flip side of it is that, Keir Starmer's leadership campaign was partly funded by Peter Coates of Bet365. Rachel Reeves has had 2 or 3 donations from gambling executives. I think the gambling industry has the ear of number 10 and future number 10 and number 11. So I think the BGC line is going to be followed, really.
The Liberal Democrats had in their manifesto that they were going to take a public health-based approach, and the data that Public Health England has provided and that the Gambling Commission has relied on has been shown to be questionable, and questions have been asked about it. So that is an area that needs scrutiny, I think.
The word affordability or affordability checks first appeared on that list of Luck on Sunday talking points. Sorry, they're there. Luck on Sunday talking points in December 2020, just to give you a bit of depressing context. December the 16th, I'm told, 2020. Now, there's an issue about jockeys getting to Royal Ascot to ride British or Irish trained horses if they are based in France or on the continent. Lydia, I've got a bit of clarification on this morning. Shippy Ellis, who's acted as an agent for all the top French jockeys in recent years, he thinks this will be resolved and the visas will be fine for them to take whatever rides they want as of Tuesday. It's going to be expedited. But, he said, the problem is now that everyone is so aware of this potential issue and they're booking up jockeys, that British and Irish trainers are not booking up French-based jockeys.
Yeah.
So it could have already cost somebody like Christophe Soumi or any of the other riders that are coming over.
I don't understand why this is, suddenly a problem.
Nor does he.
We have had EU-based riders riding British-trained or British-based horses already this season, and suddenly it's come up as an issue. Now, the BHA are saying that they had communicated with the authorities of different jurisdictions in good time to tell them about this, but that obviously hasn't been communicated well, and Chippy Ellis was talking about having only found out on Tuesday.
Oh yeah, exactly. So if he only knows now, it may well be that the BHA has been warning other jurisdictions, but the message has not percolated to the appropriate
And why now?
people.
Why just suddenly now? Is
right on the cusp of Royal Ascot.
High-profile scrutiny of Royal Ascot. I don't know. I understand that the Sugar Cup is excluded from this because it is explicitly an international event. Might there be some sort of workaround there? I don't know. But at the moment,
you could easily sell it Royal Ascot as an international event to the government, couldn't you?
Yeah. The information we have at the moment is contradictory and unclear.
Did we manage to get any comment from the BHA?
No. I rang the BHA.
Did you ring the duty officer?
I did at 20 to 9 on this morning.
Did you get a response?
No.
OK. I don't know what I think about that.
Well, I mean, the bus has passed and you've already thrown them under it. So I think we all know what you think about that.
Connor, it's a triumph for Brexit, isn't it?
Look, I think it's interesting. That's one of the big unsaid things in this election campaign. No one is talking about this, and these are the unintended consequences. We finally managed to get exemption or the shortage occupation issue resolved with the Home Office, but we're going to see issues like this come up again and again. But, ultimately, racing should have foreseen some of this and headed it off at the pass. If we're responding to things, it's too late.
Yeah, and if people don't all realise, then why haven't they realised? If it's been happening, somebody should have spotted that there were EU jockeys riding.
And on the word that we must not speak the name of, Brexit, that also had an impact on the transporting and disappearing of horses out of Southern Ireland, across the land border with Northern Ireland, on the island of Ireland, as I think we're all meant to refer to it, through Britain and out back into the EU.
OK, let's talk about Ireland again. And in this case, it's the funds, the €350,000 black hole. You'll remember this story came up, I think, middle of last year, summer last year, and I interviewed the chief executive of the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board on Irish Derby Day at the Curragh, and he was quite tight-lipped about it. We've now got a bit of clarity as to where this money has been moved and what implications it might have for the regulator in Ireland.
Yes, that's right. Didn't it come up on the eve of Darragh O'Loughlin's appearance in front of the Public Accounts Committee?
That's right.
And it's about money that has been moved from, I'm just checking the from and to, from the Jockey's Emergency Fund to the IHRB. And then 3 months later, that transaction was reversed. And the Chief Financial Officer was taking voluntary leave. That was Donal O'Shea. It was described at the time as a grave concern. Now, Mazars, the audit firm, were brought in to have a look at, an independent firm to have a look at what exactly had gone on. Journalists in Ireland understand that senior figures at the IHRB have seen a draft copy of that report, but it seems that the final copy of that report might not even be ready for public consumption in time for the appearance in front of the Oireachtas on Thursday. Yeah,
because Darragh O'Loughlin, he was up in front of the committee, wasn't he? And he said, "I've got to stop you there. There's a matter of grave concern." And then that was it. His appearance was finished and over and done. So I was never quite sure of the exact motivation of that, but I guess he had to bring it up then to stop them investigating any further while they got their house in order.
And the reason that we even know about this amount of detail is that the IHRB annual report for 2022 came out last week, and the explanation of that was within that document, and it's now become a sort of annual controversial event, hasn't it, the publication of the IHRB accounts, because of the previous year we had the whole Dennis O'Regan golden handshake package, which exceeded the amount that had been agreed under his auspices in that organisation.
And I suppose the bigger picture here is that when you are heavily government funded, then you are obviously that much more accountable. You wouldn't get a situation like this quite the same here.
Look, I think Irish racing has big problems and challenges. I read the Irish papers every weekend, and consistently on a Sunday, broadsheets have been running 2-page spreads on all sorts of aspects of Irish racing, not to conflate issues, but this, along with the RTE investigation. I think there is a moment of reckoning coming for Irish racing. We should just say that we had good news last week. Nina Carberry was elected to the European Parliament. She'll be a strong voice for racing in Brussels, so congratulations to her. But look, I think the political dynamic in Ireland has shifted too, and you just don't have TDs in those rural constituencies who will go to the wall for racing.
This was always coming, isn't it? It's sort of a bit what has happened in Britain, that whole kind of dynamic, and you've seen it shifting in the reaction to a series of welfare concerns that have arisen in Ireland. We've had them in Britain as well, but we're well down the track of the public. And also you have the impact of social media, of course, which amplifies and accelerates the whole reaction.
I think where the BHA are right is not to be kind of smug about this when looking at Ireland and saying that we need to work as Britain and Ireland, and we need to offer each other as much help and assistance as we possibly can, because, you know, my issue is your issue and your issue is my issue, and try and give as much help as
totally agree, because I don't think that the general public distinguish between a welfare concern in Hong Kong or in British racing. It is racing as a whole sport that are in it together, and there's nothing that anybody can do about that. The thing that should be key for Irish racing is the amount of money it generates for the economy. I mean, it is so important to the economy. That is something that should be regularly driven home.
But of course, the ban on daytime gambling advertising, as you say, the documentary, the RTE documentary, the scrutiny from the Oireachtas on public funds being moved around. It's a critical moment.
Irish racing is fighting on all fronts, I think, at the minute.
A critical moment. There are new measures in Britain surrounding the regulation of syndicates and large large partnerships, syndicates, racing clubs. So you have to be... The specifics are quite important, Lydia, because then you say, well, what's a syndicate? It's not necessarily what is counted as a syndicate by the BHA. If it is publicly advertised,
yes.
That's it, isn't it? It's a publicly advertised syndicate. It's not just you and a bunch of mates.
Yeah, and but it includes a syndicate that a trainer might set up, so it reaches into there, and it also includes racing clubs where you might not actually have a share in the horse itself.
But there's got to be a deal of commerciality behind it in order to fall under these regulations, right? Yeah,
that's right. But I think it's really important. I mean, we've had so many instances of where people have been taken for a ride, essentially, by syndicates, and it's right that there is increased scrutiny and increased responsibility on those syndicates. It's such a growth area of ownership within the sport. And I think it's great for the sport. I think you can have people who will be, even sort of racing clubs, spend very, very little. You might then think, well, I'm having such a great time, I'm going to spend a little bit more. And, there will be people coming through into the sport via that. And I think it's particularly with, owner-breeders becoming less impactful and, that whole kind of challenging economics even for those people, then it's really important that syndicates grow. But in order for syndicates to grow, they have to be trustworthy. Can I have new measures on the spelling of nouns, please?
Yes, you can. Yes. Yeah. Well, unless you're American.
That's true, but we are
unless
not.
You're American. But this does go to an international audience in the dictionary. License. Yes.
To our American friends.
But very good.
You're okay.
Incidentally, I'm very impressed with your new mug. Is this sponsored by the Epsom drawer by any chance?
Well,
using a Sharpie on the instead of is that what inspired that?
Clearly, my appearance on this show was as well thought through as that. But at least we've got more people standing around.
As she wrote the L, I thought it was going to be Lydia on Sunday.
Would I?
Matter of time.
That's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for
the tribute.
You can keep that. Neil Channing is going to get stuck into the watering. I should think. I really feel for Chris Stickles now.
Don't give me all that stuff about it's such a hard job, clerk of the course, it's so difficult, blah blah blah.
You're an Ascot boy as well.
I love Ascot.
That's something that you don't like to confess too often.
No, I love Ascot.
Not any socialism or bar in Ascot.
That's where the camera ends. You just see socialism.
I used to scamper around Ascot racecourse as a youngster, trying to avoid the stare of my geography teacher, who was
exactly the same. See, we've had exactly the same childhood.
Skiving off.
So can I just set this up quickly?
Chris Stickles said that it was possible they were going to be forced to water.
Yes.
Well, who was forcing him? No one's forcing him.
Well, extremely firm ground would force him to water.
Well, what are you calling extremely firm? Like, you can have firm in the going description.
You can have good.
Good to firm is a thing. Like, that's not.
If you've got a 5-day fixture.
Yeah.
What you ideally don't want to be doing is bunging loads of water on during the fixture because you want stable, consistent ground.
I understand all
That's your ideal.
I understand.
You've got an unsettled weather forecast.
Well, first of all,
so he hasn't been able to water up to this point.
Don't give me that. He won't be able to water during the fixture for a start.
No, I said it's suboptimal to water during the fixture. Ideally, you don't want to water during the fixture.
It's not like the taps are going to be broken during the fixture. Like, Ascot's some way off at the moment. It's still like a couple of days to make their mind up. Yeah, okay, so like it was absolutely hacking it down in much of the south of England yesterday. There's forecast rain on Thursday. There's forecast rain on Friday. Like, it's not a certainty that it's not going to rain between now and Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. And anyway, it's not even good to firm yet. Like, I don't understand how one person... given that some of the horses want fast ground and some of the horses don't want fast ground, I don't see how one person should be able to decide which horses they're going to favour that week in the biggest week of the year. That just seems wrong to me. And, nobody can convince me that running on good to firm ground is, if you generally think
it's good to firm. It's good to firm. I'm looking at the latest update from Ascot Racecourse.
That's great.
They've been brilliant on this. They've been updating every...
Yeah, but we're in the middle of June. We should be running on good to firm ground.
Listen, Good to firm, good in places. 2 millimetres of rain, 2 mils in the last 24 hours. Now, it might have been hosing down in North Devon, but it was, that's quite a long way from Ascot.
I was in West London yesterday and it was hacking it down.
Right. And now this is the important bit. There's only been 9 mils, Lydia, in the last week. And the estimated rainfall until racing on Tuesday, 0 to 2 millimetres.
Yeah.
So if you're good to firm now, and this is Ascot, a free draining track, and they haven't watered, you're looking at firm on Tuesday. If there's no rain.
If there's no rain. Yeah, but the thing is they water and then it rains.
Can't start a 5-day meeting on firm ground.
They're always watering and then it rains in race courses. It happens all the time.
I have some sympathy for Neil's point. You know, the premise that you don't want to be watering in the middle of a 5-day meeting, I just don't feel that has the power that it used to have, in that we have such a much more variable forecast. Things can change so much, and our summers are much less reliable in terms of sunshine. We're used to water going down. You know, the night.
All I'm saying is he won't want to. It's not
I
ideal.
understand that.
I'm not saying you shouldn't.
I just feel this argument has less power than it used to.
No one's forcing him.
But he does not want to start off on faster than good to firm. That is understandable. But
I understand that. I understand that.
He was talking about wanting to start on good to firm, good in places, wasn't he? On the Tuesday.
And what do you think about that?
I think he should be starting on good to firm.
Yeah.
In June.
The BHA provision that everybody talks about is a bit more nuanced than people suggest.
Evidently.
Yeah. Because it says, if you've got undulations, blah, 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 pretty much every racecourse in the country. So anyway, that's the situation with watering and going at Ascot at the moment. Chris Giles, who's a prominent owner, mainly with Paul Nicholls, but also with other trainers, is having a dispersal sale. There's some very high-profile horses in here as well, including Stay Away Faye and Rubo, and a very good winner of a bumper at Newbury, who probably might make more money than all the others. They're going to Goffs to be dispersed. How concerned should we be that a major national hunt owner is temporarily getting out of the game?
Well, the statement made was that it was very personal circumstances, that his work is increasingly taking him abroad, and that he didn't want his pastime to be taking what spare time he had, leisure time he had, away from his family, and he was making a decision based on that. You were making the point it's not the first time that...
No, he has been in and out before.
I mean, clearly it's going to be a blow to primarily Paul Nicholls. And it is a great shame, because he's a really positive influence on the jump racing scene, and I enjoy what he has to say about horse racing.
I suppose the thing that surprised me was that they're all going to public auction, and that Paul Nicholls wasn't sort of said, he said, well, look, can you find owners for these at the right price? But I guess you have to have some way of putting an accurate valuation on them.
Yes, I suppose so. I mean, we don't know the ins and outs of that and that particular conversation that presumably the two of them might have had. So, I mean, clearly it's not a positive for Paul Nicholls in particular, and necessarily British jump racing, because it means that the horses could be bought to race elsewhere, primarily.
Has anyone been noticing the Jumps Trainers Championship in the early...
I have not, go on.
I haven't really been paying any attention to it. I think Dan Skelton's in the lead.
I assume.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty fast out of the blocks as far as I can see. Are you still jumps punting at the moment?
I did have a bet on a Paul Nicholls winner the other day, actually. But, he's not really having many runners in the summer, is he? So, obviously, Dan Skelton's going to be some way in front. And then Willie Mullins is going to come and do them both in the final furlong, so...
OK. All righty. Well, those were this week's talking points.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.